It's always an interesting proposition to stand before a group of people and talk when you're as much of an introvert as I am. So I want to start this evening with a quote from one of our most successful entrepreneurs of our modern day world. And I'm using this quote because I believe it speaks to one of the most important ingredients of living, period. But even more importantly, I think it also speaks to what I will call soul growth. I think it also speaks to the concept of spiritual understanding. And I don't think either of those can be achieved just through simplified beliefs about ambition. So these are Mr. Bezos's words. He said, "When I first met John Doerr, who is the partner at Kleiner Perkins, the investment company who invested in Amazon, one of the things he said to me stuck with me. He said, what startup companies do is they usually take their precious early capital dollars and then they systematically eliminate risk, and then they consider themselves to be amongst the successful ones." He continues. He said, "What people often get wrong is that when you are a startup company, 99% of whether you make it to being a more established company is luck." He said, "We worked incredibly hard at Amazon. We've cared for our customers, but we also had the planets aligned for us, and they aligned perfectly." He said, "In those early days, the perfection was easily seen in terms of the timing and many other things that enable us to continue despite all the poor decisions that turned out to be the right decisions. And also in those early days, when the company's destiny was not really in its own control, and as the company was growing larger and becoming more established, we learned an incredible lesson. And that lesson was not to worry about external things." Close quote. So my chore for tonight is to speak on the topic of being present. And it's not about just being present, it's being present so that you can hone your attention and your energy. And it's based on chapter 3 of the book, Be Present, so you can hone your attention and energy. And ownership is an interesting concept, especially in our world, because we take definitions seriously. Owning something actually means having a legal right to use it, or to possess it, or to transfer it. But philosophically and psychologically and spiritually, ownership infers a deep responsibility for something which in turn suggests that if you're taking that responsibility for something, that it also deserves and needs your full attention as much as is feasible. Close quote. The author of the book we're using, Stolberg, says studies have found that on average, people spend 47% of their waking hours thinking about something other than what is right in front of them. In other words, their tasks, their goals, their desires, their families, their mates, their children. And he said all of those things should be our priorities. And he said the reason we've done that is that we've been conditioned to believe if you're not constantly scheming and strategizing and taking inventory of our past or thinking ahead to the future, that we'll miss out on something. And I've been a busy man in my life, and I know that's true for me. I can remember my children were young and having to work sometimes 15, 16 hours a day to make sure that we had enough. And so, in essence, I may have robbed them of some precious time, and I know I've robbed myself of some precious time. So, one of the messages here is sometimes in life we have to accept where we are to get to where we want to go. We have to be present to where we are. We have to feel it. We have to own it. We have to wrap our arms around it, metaphorically speaking. And then, as the old gospel hymn states, we have to surrender to it. My favorite song is, "Here I am, Lord, use me." And I think we don't think about these concepts deeply enough when we're enthralled in the process of trying to find success in life and trying to establish whatever it is we want to establish. And because we're not focused on those spiritual concepts, sometimes we lose control of our health, of our relationships, of the things that are more important for us. So it's about being present to something and holding on to it and blessing it and being grateful for it. And then once you reach that particular level of true ownership, you cannot become distracted. And distraction is the foundation of failure. And the alchemy of success, distraction is also a reason for not being able to succeed. In the scriptures, the arch enemy is the devil. I never thought I'd say that. But reading through the scriptures recently, I came to the understanding that this is not about a literal devil. It's a metaphorical devil. It's that devil within us that sometimes suggests to us that we are incapable, unlovable, undoable, unbelievable. And it's time to let that go. Understanding this is one thing, but practicing it is something entirely different. Not everyone wants to be or aspires to be as successful as Bezos. Thank God. And I mean that seriously, because just being human is an amazing experience that I think we sometimes don't appreciate. And I think there's a time in the evolution of our spirit where we have to come to a point of understanding how valuable we are as human beings and forget about all the old Bible stuff about dying and going to hell and being miserable sinners and all of that crap that has some symbolical essence to it, but that's all it is symbolical. I've walked through as much hell on this planet as I ever will in some afterlife. So I know that is true. So again, not all of us want to be or aspires to be Bezos. And there may have been times in his life where he didn't aspire to be either. But I also believe everyone in this human family has aspired in one way or another to be the best us. And I think we need to give ourselves credit for it and understand how valuable it is. And remind ourselves to set about doing that as much as we possibly can. One of the amazing things that happens in this beautiful process of aging is you get to look back over a long period. You know, and I feel like I'm a fairly young man, but I'm approaching 84 years of age. That's a long time on this planet. The average lifespan in America, believe it or not, is actually 67 years of age. So many of us have crossed beyond that and have opportunities to go even further. And somewhere in our journey, most of us have found something within us that has motivated us to go beyond our sense of ordinariness. Think about this. If you worked for a business or in a factory for 25 years before you retired, do you realize that's more than a quarter of a century? How much time is engaged in that in just a 40-hour week? There's something in us. And we call it God. We call it Christ. We call it Jesus. We call it divine. Sometimes we may call it just outright stubbornness. And that something fires the imagination, and it fires the human will, and it fires the imagination to go beyond what we previously believed to be possible for us. And as a result, we make a contribution by creating something that has value to us and that also has value to others. There's a line from one of my favorite songs that simply says, I hate to say it, but it's probably true. We are the spitting images of what we perceive as God. We need to develop that mindset and forget about all the negativity that we allow ourselves to get engaged in, because more often than not, that negativity is the result of a method of control. Think about this. Take 20 animals and put them in a cage and just turn them loose. And 99% of the time, they'll get along. But if you toss something in there that one of them or all of them perceive to be of value, like a leg of lamb or whatever, then immediately they become enemies. Not in the sense of mad at each other, but in the sense of, I've got to get this before somebody else gets it. And so then we drift off in the chaos. One of my friends once said to me, he said, "Man, you think too much." And I thought about that. I probably do. But it's a mindset. A mindset is very important to have, because in it you can find refuge, and in it you can find clarity, and in it you can find understanding, and in it you can find wisdom, and in it you can find love. Those are powerful things to find. I'll tell you a little story. In a certain city, there were two brothers. One of them was the city's biggest businessman. The other was a drug addict who often got into fights, compounding his addiction often by frequently getting into fights while he was drunk. And so people were always surprised to see the huge difference between the two of them, even though they both had the same parents, both had received the same education, and they both were raised in the same environment. So some of the people decided to discern why. So they went to the house. They were invited in. They entered, and upon entering, they saw a man completely drunk. And I love that phrase, completely drunk. And they went to him, and they asked him, "Why are you like this? You fight with people for no reason. You beat your wife and your children while you're drunk. Why?" And the brother answered, "My father." So the people said, "Your father? How?" The brother said, "My father was an alcoholic. He beat my mother and both of us. So what can you expect of me? I'm just like him." And then the people went to the other brother, and he was busy with his work, but he stopped to talk with them. He said, "I'm late, and I'm sorry. How can I help you?" And the people asked him the very same question. They said, "You're such a respected businessman. You have influence everywhere. Everyone praises you. what's the reason you turned out this way? And he said, my father. And people asked in amazement, how is that possible? He answered, my father was an alcoholic. In his drunken state, he used to beat us. I watched all this silently, and I decided for myself I never wanted to be like him. So I decided I wanted to become a decent, respectful, and successful person. And that's exactly what I became. Mindset, determination, success. They're all in their entirety beautiful and wonderful and worthy concepts, and they're definitely worth pursuing. And the beauty is that we all get to decide the depth of our pursuit. Presence is a dynamic aspect of the pursuit, but so is desire. And maybe the single greatest ingredient to this wonderful journey that we are all individually and collectively on is to know what it is we truly want for ourselves, for our world, for our families, for our planet. I open this evening with a quote from Jeff Bezos. I'm a big fan of his. I've read and loved his biography, as well as I've loved and read many biographies of famous and successful people from pretty much every phase of life. But for some strange reason, his journey resonates with me because I love Amazon with all of its flaws. I'm serious. I don't know how much I've contributed, but it's way too much. And with all of its flaws, it invented something that he himself has predicted will someday drive itself out of business. So the lifestyle that he lives, the grandiosity, I don't care much about that, but for some reason I'm drawn to it. If you put me in that huge yacht of his, just me and Mary, and a crew of whatever it takes, 127 people, somebody would be dead before we reached our destination, and it would probably be me. So presence is a big deal, it really is. And I think one of the best ways of acquiring presence is through prayer and meditation. It's evident to me in reading the book by Stolberg that he is a Buddhist. Many of the concepts and ideas that he functions from are Buddhist concepts, which are in reality no different than Christianity, just phased and worded differently. But I think there are 4 key aspects to being present. And the first one is that we have to give our full attention, our undivided attention to every single important task or activity that we undertake in life. That's from communicating with one another to trying to establish a business, to completing an education, to doing whatever it is that we deem to have a high amount of value for us. Another key aspect is something called sensory awareness. Sights, sounds, smells, physical sensations All of those things remind us that we're alive, and that's powerful stuff. Another key aspect is something called mindful observations, observing your thoughts and your feelings without judgment, and then letting them pass through you without judgment. Many times we chastise ourselves for being angry. We chastise ourselves for not being perfect. We chastise ourselves for not accomplishing what we think we should accomplish. But we have to learn to be gentle with ourselves. So, mindful observations. When you observe your thoughts and feelings without judgment and letting them pass without judgment, then you're not crippled by them. And the last thing is anchoring, stabilizing, making the practice a part of you in some way. Meditation has literally been my savior. And I want to suggest to you that if you really want to connect with God, that you find a way to do meditation at a deep level. It is without question the most powerful thing that I've done in my life. And I don't hold myself up as any kind of role model or anything like that. But I've accomplished a hell of a lot in my life, way more than I ever deemed or dreamed that I would, and probably much, much more than my parents or anybody else ever thought I would. And then I've been able to walk away from all of it and still be Jimmie Scott. That's a big deal to me. So God bless. Thank you for being here.